So shall I get a map up so I can actually, where have you been? Do you travel a lot?
I did for a little bit there. I mean, I've been to Australia. I traveled to Sydney and Cairns, Melbourne, and I feel like there was another spot in Australia that I traveled to. I ended up taking something like 25 flights in a month because I was just flying back and forth from different. It was like maybe it was like 15 flights, but it was a lot. It was a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot. All in Australia.
Yeah.
Or around. Wow. Yeah, that's a lot.
Well, I had 4 weeks, and I was spending like 4 or 5 days in each, like 4 days in each little section there, and then England. I feel like I have not. I mean, I've seen the East Coast of the U.S., but there's a whole west side that I still have to go visit. I've been to Hawaii. That was,
Nice.
yeah.
Yes.
But definitely places I want to go more. Like I would love to go to Japan. My brother was actually born there because my parents were in the military when he was born. So we've always wanted to go back to Japan.
Yeah, I think Japan would be really interesting to go and visit. I think because you've got old and new to a different extreme, in my opinion. Like from what I hear about it, I've never been, but like just to bring that like futuristic way of life, traditional way of life, like in such a small area.
Yeah, and I think it's also like when you start traveling and you kind of like only go to Western world, it's like kind of all the same.
Yeah,
like you go to England and I'm sorry,
there's a lot of similarities.
Yeah,
but you kind of mentioned before, like with the way England like conquered vast land. Well, then it's inevitable that the land that they did take over, there's similarities, but then it makes it such a shame. Then it is a shame.
It's like if you can go anywhere and get a Starbucks or a McDonald's, or I mean if you go to the local grocery stores, obviously you're gonna get some different stuff, but then half the time it's, well, how do I cook this? Now I gotta look up, what do I do with this? Which is fun. That's the fun part.
Yeah. Some of the best experience I've had when I've traveled is going to a market where everything you need is there, but you're picking it and it's all fresh. And you're like, wow, okay, so like plastic isn't seen. They've literally taken it to the market that morning, and then you're just playing around with food, like, okay, what works? And the flavors are just so different to what you get that's wrapped in plastic and put on the shelf in a supermarket.
Which is actually why I prefer to Airbnb, if going somewhere, rather than, I mean, like obviously small trips, but like if you're going to another country, try Airbnb is my recommendation, because then you do cook and you can go to those, because there's a lot of times when you travel you end up going to tourist areas. Anytime you look, they always tell you like, these are the most popular places, and then you're just getting the same thing that everyone else is doing. If you go to the grocery store and you Airbnb, then you can kind of
get to know the people and the culture and the country that you're actually visiting.
Yeah.
The one thing I found really hard with Australia, I didn't do nearly as much traveling as you, is I found it really hard that I was the other side of the world, so far away from home, being the UK, yet the people I met were all English and Irish. And it was like this whole, I'm the other side of the world though. Like, I want to meet Australians.
I know. It's like, I don't want to meet you. Why are you like everyone you meet? It's funny because we moved from New York to South Carolina, and I don't think I've met anyone from South Carolina yet. Like every time I run into someone, they're like, oh yeah, I just moved from New York, or New Jersey, and I'm like, okay. So
we just we like let people know there's like this hidden alarm behind us, like, woo, we're here, come find us. So it's like a magnet
Yeah.
for people
But
who are from the same
it's just
postcode.
after like a 20-hour flight, you want someone to talk to you in a different language. It's like I want to feel like I went somewhere, and
Yes,
yeah.
that's so true. That was one of the big things. A lot of my traveling has been to countries where English isn't the first language. And ironically, most of Europe is, they have their own languages. So it's like, wow, I stepped off and I could read the signs. Like, it wasn't a challenge in that way. The challenge was the fact that I could easily get around and
Yeah.
speak to people. And it was like, oh,
I know. I guess a lot of people like that because they like I want to travel, I want to relax, and I'm kind of like, no, I want to travel and I want to figure it out.
Yeah, I want my brain to work.
You learn more. I think I've learned more in my travels than I ever did in a classroom, I will say.
What's your biggest highlight? I love this question. Like, when you think of travel, is there one thing that you go, that's the moment that I was like, yes, I love to travel?
Honestly, it was when I was in the Outback.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I loved traveling before then, but it was 3. Well, I ended up spending like 5 days in the Outback, but I did it was quite funny. So I'll tell you about the trip. So you go on it was like this package deal, right? So I stayed at a hostel, and the hostel said they had complimentary breakfast for you before you went on your walkabout. On your walkabout.
On your walkabout.
See, I don't think that's a good accent. See, I'm just making just pulling.
Was that an Australian accent?
I think so. I'm not sure.
No, it wasn't.
I don't think so. Like, don't ever do that again.
I think you were just being more of an intense American down the
Walkabout, water. So there's a bunch of us, and we all got different packages. So we wake up in the morning and we're all like, where's the free breakfast? And they're like, oh, and they pull out a loaf of bread and a jar of peanut butter and say, here you go. And I was like, I guess that is technically breakfast, but I don't know when I'm going to eat again because I'm in the Outback. So you see this big van, this big, like almost like a tour bus pull up, and they start calling out the names, and half the people go on, and you're like, oh, good, all right. So this is what because I've never seen what I signed up for,
Right. Okay. So you're oblivious to what you're going on.
Really kind of oblivious.
Okay. So you've got your peanut butter and bread.
Peanut butter and bread.
Actual breakfast right there.
Yeah.
And your coach rocks up.
And the coach walks up, and half the people go on. My name wasn't called. I'm like, yeah, that's not mine. And what mine was called was the Rock Tour. So you went to Kings Canyon and Ayers Rock, and you did. So then another big giant RV air conditioned bus pulls up, and some more people walk on, and then all of a sudden a van with a trailer and a hitch come up, and it's kind of like a cartoon where it's like rocky and bumpy. And they're like, Nathan, and I'm like, yeah. Yes. No AC. You got the windows that kind of go up and down. Best experience though, I would do that trip every single time with that bus rather than because you end up, everyone on the group was from somewhere else. So still no Australians, but you had people from Switzerland and Korea and New Zealand and Holland, just a wide variety, and you're stuck with these 20 some odd people and there's no bathrooms, right? So you're camping, you're doing your business over some sand dune, you're sleeping in sleeping bags next to a fire, no tent, and you really get to kind of
Mm.
you know, kind of explore and really get to know these people. And a lot of
Cool.
them, what they would do was they wanted to travel a lot. So they would go to, like, I think one girl from Holland, she went to Sydney. She'd pick up she'd work at a restaurant for like 6 weeks and then pretty much leave, quit, go travel somewhere else, pick up a job at a restaurant. And they had I guess they just had like a working visa. And they were just able to kind of migrate. And I always kind of thought that was amazing. It's just I didn't have the carefree enough. Like there was
Yeah.
too many other things. Like it was like you almost had to decide, like, is that where you want to be, or do you want to save up money for, you know?
Something.
I had
It's definitely mindset though, isn't it? In anything like that. And it's how big a risk or whatever are you gonna take, and what's
yeah
the consequence of it? And it's that, I mean, you say carefree, and I like that. It's like, oh, but what's the consequence of me being that carefree? And actually, there's no right or wrong. I mean, we're both travelers here, and I'm that person who comes back to the UK, quits the job, and then travels for a big block of time. And then once the money's run out, go, okay, I need to go back to work, but I normally fly home. And I think traveling, it's fun. You can literally do it in any style or format,
yeah
but you have to, I can't handle package holidays. Is something I find really, really hard to embrace. So like when you have
oh
a hotel and everything's in that space.
I don't
And
like that. I've never done one of those. It sounds miserable. I mean, some people I know, like in the US, a lot of people like the package deal when you go down to Mexico,
yeah.
which I feel like, even though this might be shown, I get, because
Okay. But is that your relationship with the country? Do you know what I mean? Because I think sometimes where I'm going with this is the media or our experiences and knowledge of certain countries then puts our guard up, doesn't it? And we go, do
yeah
you know what? We're going to go and we want to make sure we have a good time, but we want to feel safe, because at the end of the day, you don't want to go somewhere and not. But it's actually down to the knowledge you have of that country, say, because of what you've grown up and known and what you have access to.
yeah. I think there's definitely aspects. I agree with you 100%. Yes, because I
Yeah.
think there's definitely places in Mexico that you could probably maneuver without feeling like you had to stay in like a resort that's overpriced.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, people that go and they do like the group tours, and you spend all day on on a tour bus, or they drive around. Like I remember my first year in New York, and it was funny. I was working in Manhattan, and it was a long day, and I'm walking home because I I lived like in like kind of like upper mid Manhattan, and I worked kind of like mid Manhattan, so I was only like 40 blocks away. So
Mhm.
sometimes after work, I would walk and then go through Central Park. And all of a sudden, this big tour bus, and the tour bus was like everyone was seated like facing one direction, so they could, like, as they're going around, they're looking directly at the buildings, you
Yeah.
know, and they're all waving, and I'm like, you're just watching me live my normal life right now. That's what you paid for. You paid to watch me walk to and from work. This
Yeah.
is amazing. So my travel, I try to avoid that. I don't.
Yeah.
I think some people like it because they don't have to. It's taken care of. They don't have to think, and it's relaxing. They can just see a lot in a
Hmm.
short period of time, but you don't really get to experience it. And my point of view of travel is, don't try to feel like you have to see everything in one shot. You can always come back. If you made it once, you can always come back.
Absolutely. Have you got a funny travel story?
Mm.
I mean, I love the fact that you thought you were going on luxury buses to the middle of Australia, but your van rocked up, but that you preferred that. Have you got one that makes you laugh? You sit there and go, I can't believe I even put myself in that situation, or
I have some funny stories. I don't know if they're really appropriate or.
Okay, maybe wrong
I
question.
mean,
Depends how comfortable you feel to share.
I mean, in England there was a lot of alcohol for a couple
Yeah.
nights. So we won't go into those details. I'm trying to think.
Yeah.
Australia, there was.
It's okay if there's not. Not one.
I know. What about you? What's your?
I'm really ridiculous when it comes to travel. I have traveled a lot. I'm amazed that I've survived most of my trips.
Have you seen Up in the Air?
Pardon?
Have you seen Up in the Air?
No.
Okay. And I digress. Go ahead.
Okay, maybe I'll put that on a watch list. Ironically, it was when I was going to Texas, flying. Obviously, you have your luggage. Number one rule in every country, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is do not give your luggage to a stranger. And
don't drink something that a stranger gives to you. Don't give luggage to them.
Didn't drink, didn't take anything. I'd gone through checkout, so I'd arrived, got my luggage, and there were people at the end of like a conveyor belt type thing, and they were all suited up. They were in like blue, in my memory, they're in like blue outfits. And they were like, oh, instead of carrying your bags up the stairs, give them to us, and on the conveyor belt, your bag will be at the top. I don't know at what point in my head I thought, that's a really good idea. How nifty.
Stranger danger. Stranger danger. Go ahead.
Yeah, anyway, there was no danger. It just meant that I got lost in the airport. I didn't find my bag, got completely lost. Ended up, so you've got to imagine that arrivals comes, my friend who I was going out to see was stood at arrivals. I somehow didn't walk through the arrivals gate. I'd gone up a few levels and was going through the security guards through departure and saw the back of my friend, still with no bag, still with no bag. I ran and I was like, oh my goodness, I'm here. Why are you stood over here? And they were like, where have you come from? Where's your bag? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know my bag.
I just imagine that conversation of I gave it to some stranger that said they would bring it to me. That they work for the airlines? No.
2 hours later, how the security guards didn't stop me. I mean, there was that moment of, oh my goodness, there's security with really big guns, and I just ran through them. How I survived is quite something. And yeah, 2 hours later, the kind people who don't give your bags to anyone, the kind people who were in the blue uniforms, I'm sure there was everything, they were very legit, had wrapped it all up in tape and put it in a locker of abandoned luggage, because I didn't collect it at the top of the stairs, because I'd gone on a little trip around the airport.
and it's funny because everything's in English. It's not even, as we discussed before, like it's different.
That's when it's younger me. When I describe myself as enthusiastic, excitable also comes up. When that's bubbling, yeah, any logic kind of goes out. My brain is changed as I've grown, and however many travel mistakes later, I'm a little bit better.
There is something to say of being in complete control when you're going through the airport. So I lived in St. Louis, and I had to fly to Chicago, and then I had to fly to LA before taking the flight to Sydney.
Yeah.
So I had brought a friend with me at the time, and you know, there's like a 4-hour layover in LA, and I'm looking at and I had flown quite a bit because so I kind of know my way around an airport, and the flight, the gate had changed, and I said, you know, this is where our gate is, and she kept arguing with me that I was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, you know what, okay, I'm wrong, you're right, I'll listen. So we're sitting there at this gate, and it's about 15 minutes before boarding time, and I'm thinking, there's no plane at this gate. Like, the plane has not arrived, and very few people are sitting around us.
Yeah.
I said, you sure you don't think I'm right? She's like, oh, I'll go check. And
Right.
no, we were on the other end of the airport and had to book it to get to. They started boarding that flight, and I was like, I am not going to get stuck here for another 24 hours because I was like,
yeah, I've had a very similar experience. And so in England, they come round and they check your ticket before you actually even start lining up to board. And I was sitting there again, very comfortable. I love travel stories. Yeah, I sit there and I'm like living these moments at the moment. And she was looking, and I kept hearing a different country. I can't even remember what country it was, but it sounded really exotic. I was going to Ireland, which is beautiful, but I wouldn't describe it as exotic. And she was like, you're at the wrong gate. And I was like, it's leaving at the same time as this one. And they put me in a buggy, you know, the airport buggies that the workers move,
okay.
Transport buggies.
Are you calling buggy or
buggy? B-U-G. Buggy.
Okay.
What do you call them?
I mean, I guess you could call them a buggy. I don't know. They kind of look like golf carts.
Buggy? Yeah, a bit like a golf cart. Yeah.
Carts, but I guess buggy sounds better than a cart. Little. I guess it's buggy. I don't really know. I feel like I've never called out and been like, oh, there's the cart / buggy.
Now, when you next go on holiday, you'll be like, there's a cart, or is it a buggy? And there'll be a whole conversation.
That's right. And everyone will look at me and be like, you know, the
you know, those things transport you. Yeah, that's another good, we'll come back. But yeah, basically now it's not as fun. But yeah, I was in a cart / buggy being shot across. We were going around where all the planes were parked up so that they could get me to the aeroplane. So yeah, I hear you. Like, just, they're brilliant.
Did you kind of feel like first class though when they started doing that? Like, all of a sudden they pull up, swing around, and you're like, I'm here.
Let's go. I'm going to my private jet. Let's do this.
That's right. I think it's always weird when you have to walk on the tarmac and then walk up the stairs on there, because you do kind of feel like, am I supposed to be here, or I am supposed to be here type of.
But we're very obedient, aren't we? Because they have all the lines. Do not cross that line. This is where you've got to be. I mean, the Brits love a queue, a line.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's the fact that we listen. It's like, oh my goodness, okay, if we cross over that white line, we're in trouble. So we've got to stay right here so that we can get up the stairs. You have to do everything we're told.
Yeah, I don't think it's the same in America, because they'll say, you know, there's a queue and people will be on their phones and just kind of dip a little off to the side. It'll be like, we call it a line, but no one actually stays in line. Everyone's always kind of.
Oh yeah, no, I think we're a little bit obsessed. People line everywhere.
England's weird with their cues and traditions. The fact that, don't they still wear wigs in the jury, like you know, like in courtrooms?
Yeah,
it's like sometimes like you gotta let certain things go. Like, move on.
You're not into the wig.
It looks ridiculous. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure on how it works, but I want to say it's a particular level within the law. Like you can go to we have like different courthouses. So I think it's when you're up there, you know, if you're standing in that courtroom, you've done some serious stuff.
So if you see a wig, you know you did something wrong.
I mean, I could
Which
make
feels right. You know, if I walk in a room and everyone's dressed as if it's like the 1800s, I feel like I'm probably in the wrong.
In saying that, it's probably the only time that you walk into a room and you're wearing a wig that you'll be taken seriously, because you're like, and I know, you know, like especially that style of wig, you know, you wouldn't wear it.
Like if I was like an expert witness and I was brought in and I was getting cross-examined by, you know, I would probably say, I'm sorry, I can't take any of your questions seriously with that stupid thing on your head. And then
in my mind, it would be quite itchy.
I would feel like it would. And what are there wig stores? Like a lot of like, where do you, I wonder where you.
I mean, you have to really look after them. I mean, it means you've made it. If you've got the wig on, because of how long it takes you to get into law here, like to get to that level. So, and I don't know what the process is like. I actually have no knowledge on the law system, to be fair.
But that's okay. We can just speculate.
We can speculate as well. Yeah. But yeah, there'll be stores. There'll be particular areas where you can go and get your wig and gown and
I think for next time we should go on Amazon and order ourselves some proper wigs.
Okay. I might just wear a wig. You can have it, and I'll wear a wig. We'll surprise each other with what we're going to turn up in. Okay. We'll just see what happens.
See what wigs we can find.
See what happens. What are we both going to turn up as?
I'll borrow my mother-in-law's wig, one of her wigs. It'll be.
Oh yeah. Has she got particular colours? What's your colour?
I think you know, like the reddish brunette. I think do that. You know.
Yeah, okay. Bit of
strawberry blonde. Yeah. It'll bring out my paprika beard.
Yeah, I'm thinking. For me, I've got Elton John in my head, you know, with the way he, like his sunglasses and just
the most British answer. I think I could. You
probably
could.
I know. I was going to say it. Like, wow, okay. I might as well own it.
Own it. Just own it. You already know you got the big glasses. You got the Elton John wig. You just need some flair.
Yeah, something extra.
You have something puffy that you can.
Okay. I'll get creative for the next time we do this. Okay.
Wigs are us.
We'll just be in silence. We'll just stare at each other. We're in a courthouse.
We could start appropriating each other's culture. So like I'll dress up like a proper English person.
Okay. And then I get to choose which character from America I'm going to be. Yeah. You've got lots of different characters that go on in the States.
Yes, you could be California girl, which you know, then you gotta use that.
I was instantly going more gangster.
Looking at you, I could see that.
Like
just. What would be your gang? What would be the name of the group of your gang?
It'd have to be something really stupid, wouldn't it? Because I mean, I'd never survive in a real gang.
The Pasty Traveler. Just look at that.
Pasty. How can I do a P? pasty. Oh,
Like that.
traveler.
Traveler. Oh, wait. Can I make a T? Or no? Might be like a lower.
Oh, there you go. Pasty. The pasty travelers on Hill A. Yeah.
We're gonna get canceled pretty quickly, aren't we? Between the two. You told me about the Texas story. I feel like we can circle back to what your experience was going into Texas.
I think it's really interesting because I was 18 at the time. It was like the first time that I'd gone away really completely on my own to like get a flight and travel. So although I wasn't a naive 18-year-old, you hear stories of places around the world, don't you?
Yeah.
And
you only know what you know. And I think that's what people, have to understand too, is that like you only know what, is presented to you. I mean, American, we run into that situation all the time.
Yeah, but it is so true. And I think you kind of turn up, and what you don't understand is my friend, also an English guy. I'm not a guy, but also English.
Wear the right wig next week, and you can rephrase that.
Yeah, it's like political correctness flagging up. And he was like, he was very new to the area. He moved to Houston, which got told that out of Texas, Houston's quite open-minded compared to other areas of Texas. So I was like, okay, like I'm down just to explore and understand and learn. But he was ringing me about situations where he was at what you call a gas station and he saw members of the KKK, and he was like, oh shit, this is real. This is real. It's not in the past, it still exists.
What year would you say this was?
2008.
Oh wow, okay.
2008, 2009. So I was like, oh, great. Okay, yeah. Because for us, you hear it as a historical thing.
Yeah.
It's not. What? Anyway. So I was like, okay, well, keep yourself safe, keep yourself out of trouble, But anyway, then in the next breath, I get another phone call. Sarah, you never guess what happened. And I was like, what's that? He goes, well, I decided to go on a little road trip and explore the neighborhood. He goes, and I drove down the wrong road. And I was like, well, what do you mean you drove down the wrong road? Because here really, there may be pockets of driving down the wrong road, but majority of the time, you can't really drive down the wrong road. Yeah. And he goes, yeah, well, they're a gang just stepped out in front of me and pointed their gun at my car. Like people just, and he goes, I've never put my car into reverse so quickly to get out of the road.
So he's telling you these stories before you fly.
And I've already booked my flight. This is build up to me going.
So he's deciding to let you know about all these situations.
His experiences. Yeah. He's like, and I was like, right, okay. And then I get another phone call, and there's other incidences in a shop where a young man stood in front of him, was flirting with the lady behind the counter. He was in the middle, and then there was another gentleman behind him. I don't know how to word this, but with very different ideas of how they should respect each other, I guess. And Tom kind of was, and he's like this blonde, blue-eyed, really typical English lad, like just really laid back. That's all I can say. He's like, and then, this lad was just flirting with the pretty lady behind the counter. He goes, all of a sudden, this man from behind taps the one in front. It's like, if you don't move your ass, I'm going to shoot a cap in it. And it was one of these, and I was like, why are you telling me these stories? I don't need to know.
If anything, I'd say just don't take me to any of these places that you've been in the last 2 weeks, because obviously.
Yeah. So, and again, this is just his experience and whatnot. And so I get there, And he's like, don't worry, Houston's one of these places where it's really open-minded. I was like, well, you've given me a real build-up to what open mind means. So thank you very much. And he took me to his college. And again, guns aren't legal here. So it was quite interesting when you see no smoking and no gun signs going into college. And you're like, oh, okay, this is a culture difference.
Why do we need a sign for that? I don't understand. Why is there a sign for no-go?
Well, I'm assuming, I suppose in college, is it acceptable to take a gun?
No, in college, universities, a lot of times public, any public buildings, like in government-owned buildings, you're not. And I think, and it's fascinating. So my eyes and my head are being taught, or this stuff's real. It's not. So in England, are there signs that say no shanks, no knives into this building?
Depends.
No ice picks. Keep your ice picks at home.
Ice picks. It doesn't get that. We don't get that much snow. But it's like a layer that melts by the end of the day. It doesn't. So but it was just a really fascinating place. And we were sat at a table with a family friend. Well, prior to this, I'd met a family friend. She was like, have you ever seen a gun before? And I was like, it's not really in my life, no. So then I suddenly saw this gun beside me, and I was like, do you even use it? And she was like, if someone who's not meant to be walking up my drive is coming to walk up my drive, then hell yeah, in a really thick Texas accent. And I always picture, and this is a major stereotype, so apologies, no reason to offend, but it was a proper animal heads on the wall, American flag outside. So my imagination goes wild anyway. So I was just like, wow, this is all for real. This exists. And
this isn't just the TV show. This is, and it's funny when your expectation of a place based on the stereotypes that's presented to you, is you go and you're like, oh, so I wasn't being.
It wasn't just the movie.
It wasn't,
Or, and I'm not sitting there saying that it's everywhere, because I know America's absolutely huge. So I have no idea, and I can't make judgment anywhere else. But it's this, it was just this, I don't know.
Was it culture shock?
I think it probably was. Out of everywhere I've been, it's probably the one place that taught me that, and I don't know if we said it before in previous conversations, here, there's a lot of tension, whether that's race, whether that's the way people live. So that exists, but it's quite underground. The voices are starting to rise, being like, no, this all still exists. I think when I went to Texas, it's out there. It's not behind the scenes. It's not behind curtains. It's, well, this is my opinion of this type of person, and this is what will happen if they decide to cause trouble. And that's on both sides. And I think that's probably a shock to me, because you can have your opinion, but you don't say it out loud. So I think you know what I mean, or if you do, be prepared to really offend people. And I think it was just a really fascinating experience, and I'd like to go back to see whether that's now what you're looking at however many years later, and so your brain creates certain stories, and so it's it'd be interesting to see what my opinion would be.
You go back and you're like, so have you used that gun yet? And they turn to you and say, just well, the only reason
but I love the fact that America's notorious for huge amounts of food and portions, and then I go to Texas and it was even bigger, and I was just like, wow. And then it was I remember being in the car and they were like, we need to go to the cash point, but it was a drive-through cash point. And I was just like, a drive-through cash point? I didn't even know these existed. So it was just mad.
I mean,
it was just an interest. And I would always recommend people to go to those places, to go, and culture teaches you so many things. But I suppose 18-year-old Sarah hadn't traveled the world like I have now. So it would just be really interesting to see what experiences I would have now.
Well, now that you've traveled so much from when you were 18, what do you think your biggest, I guess, perception change or growth has kind of like from 18-year-old Sarah to now, when you travel, what is something that you've learned?
I have learned that the media either glamorizes or puts down and exaggerates beyond belief. Some of the most incredible places I've been to are known to be notorious for danger and disease, and you don't go there, you don't do it, it's war, da 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 da. And I think I've suddenly not held maybe the press in as high a status as I used to. And I think that's probably that everyone is human. And if you give them an opportunity, I mean, it's quite a deep response, isn't it? But it's like that. If you actually give time to speak to the locals of absolutely anywhere, you get to know the real place rather than the glamorized or the media perception of a place. And I suppose it goes full circle from what we were saying with traveling. When you go on a controlled tour, they're controlling what you see in that country, and that doesn't necessarily make it real. Like I always argue, London is incredible, but it's not the summary of what England stands for. So it's that actually very, very different to what the capital represents, and other cities are very different. So yeah, I would say my understanding of people, and that we all have that common link, we're all very similar. If we really think about it.
I think that goes for a lot of things. I think in general, you know, I mean, you could even say that about religions or any sort of, you know, little group where, unless if you're not, when you're surrounded by people that think like you, everyone else is evil or going, you know what I mean? Like in the sense of there's a fear aspect, you know, well, they're so different because they're not part of my little group. And then once you go out, you're like, oh wait, no, we all think the same thing. It's just, you know.
Yeah. And I think differences are incredible. I think, you know, if you want to be like everyone else, how boring, in my opinion. Like the more diverse my group of friends are, the more happy, the more excited I am because I love learning. But there is that common link of actually you give someone time, they're not scary, they're not dangerous, but danger does exist. You know, these things do exist, but maybe not on the level that our small group of friends or communities teach us, I suppose.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.